Friends, thank you for being here today. What if I told you that the most significant political development of January 2026 wasn't happening in Washington as corridors of power, but rather in a decommissioned subway station beneath New York City Hall, where, at the stroke of midnight on New Year's Day, a 34-year-old democratic socialist placed his hand on two Qurans and fundamentally altered the trajectory of American politics? On January 1st, 2026, Zohran Mamdani was sworn in as the 110th mayor of New York City, becoming the first Muslim, the first South Asian, and the youngest mayor in the city's history. But these demographic firsts obscure the more profound transformation his election represents. Mamdani didn't just win a mayoral race. He demonstrated that explicitly socialist politics can capture institutional power in America's largest city, creating a template for political transformation that extends far beyond New York's boundaries. The symbolism of Mamdani's midnight ceremony revealed careful strategic thinking. The choice of a decommissioned subway station wasn't accidental. It represented deliberate rejection of traditional pomp in favor of a setting emphasizing public infrastructure and working-class transportation. When Mamdani placed his hand on two Qurans held by his wife, Syrian-American artist Rama Douaji, he was making multiple statements about religious pluralism, immigrant communities and American politics, and the integration of personal faith with democratic socialist governance. Bernie Sanders' presence at Thursday's public inauguration provides crucial context for understanding the national implications. Sanders didn't travel to New York simply to congratulate a successful candidate. His participation signals the democratic socialist movement as recognition that Mamdani represents something unprecedented: successful translation of movement politics into institutional governance in America's most complex urban environment. This endorsement from the movement's most prominent figure validates the strategic approach that prioritizes concrete governance over ideological purity. Mamdani's political trajectory illuminates the strategic evolution of American socialism from protest movement to governing force. Unlike previous socialist candidates who positioned themselves as outsiders challenging corrupt systems, Mamdani built his campaign around practical governance solutions, addressing immediate material concerns of New York residents. His platform focused on public housing expansion, fare-free public transit, municipal broadband, and direct cash assistance programs funded through wealth taxes on the financial sector. This represents a fundamental shift in socialist electoral strategy. Rather than emphasizing ideological purity or revolutionary rhetoric, Mamdani demonstrated that socialist policies could be presented as pragmatic solutions to urban governance challenges. His campaign materials rarely used socialism explicitly, instead focusing on concrete proposals that would materially improve working-class lives. This strategic framing allowed him to build coalitions extending beyond traditional leftist constituencies to include moderate Democrats concerned about housing costs, transportation reliability, and municipal service quality. The electoral mathematics reveal the potential scope of this transformation. New York City contains 8.3 million residents, representing 2.5% of total American population. The city's economy, with GDP approaching $900 billion annually, would rank as the 11th largest national economy globally if independent. When a democratic socialist captures control of this infrastructure, implications extend far beyond municipal governance. Mamdani's policy agenda would create the largest municipal socialist experiment in American history. His universal basic assets proposal would provide every New York resident with a city-funded savings account for housing, education, or business investment. Municipal broadband would establish internet access as public utility, eliminating private telecommunications monopolies. Housing proposals include direct municipal land acquisition and establishing social housing as permanent residential market sector. The federal implications cannot be overstated. If New York successfully demonstrates that socialist governance can improve urban living standards while maintaining economic growth, it provides a replicable model for other metropolitan areas. Cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Detroit contain significant populations sympathetic to democratic socialist politics. Successful implementation could accelerate socialist electoral campaigns nationwide, creating what analysts describe as municipal socialism networks that could fundamentally alter American urban governance. The timing creates immediate confrontation opportunities that could define American federalism parameters. Mamdani's inauguration coincides with Trump administration escalation of federal immigration enforcement and systematic targeting of Democratic-controlled cities. New York's sanctuary policies, expanded under Mamdani, place municipal government in direct conflict with federal enforcement priorities. Unlike previous mayors who navigated conflicts through bureaucratic resistance, Mamdani indicates willingness to engage in open political warfare with federal authorities. The infrastructure for this confrontation exists within NYC's municipal apparatus. The NYPD operates under mayoral authority and historically demonstrates greater loyalty to local than federal leadership. The city's legal department possesses resources comparable to state attorney general offices. The budget, approaching $110 billion annually, provides economic leverage exceeding most American states' GDP. This resource base enables sustained resistance to federal pressure in ways that smaller municipalities cannot match. Mamdani's approach represents strategic evolution beyond defensive postures. Rather than simply resisting federal policies, his administration appears prepared to actively undermine federal authority through municipal implementation. Municipal immigration services would create parallel bureaucratic structures, effectively replacing federal processing. Expanded identification programs could create alternative documentation, reducing reliance on federal verification. These initiatives represent direct challenges to federal monopoly on immigration and identification services. The economic implications create unique opportunities and risks. New York hosts headquarters or major operations of virtually every significant American financial institution. When a democratic socialist controls this regulatory environment, potential for systemic economic disruption becomes substantial. Mamdani's commitments include financial transaction taxes, expanded municipal banking, and public investment funds competing directly with private institutions. These policies would represent the most significant challenge to American financial capitalism since the New Deal era. The response from financial institutions has been notably measured thus far, possibly reflecting uncertainty about implementation capacity or strategic calculations about confrontation costs. However, early indicators suggest preparation for potential conflicts. Several major banks have reportedly established contingency planning committees to address municipal policy changes. Investment firms have begun relocating certain operations to suburban locations outside municipal tax jurisdiction. The National Democratic Party's response reveals deep tensions about ideological direction and coalition management. Progressive Democrats celebrate Mamdani's victory as validation of their leftward strategy through primary challenges and grassroots organizing. Moderate Democrats worry that prominent socialist successes provide Republican ammunition in suburban districts, where gains depend on appeals to voters fleeing Republican extremism but skeptical of leftist politics. Republican responses have been fragmented, reflecting uncertainty about attacking a politician whose policies poll well among urban constituencies, but whose ideological framework provides obvious conservative targets. Traditional red baiting may prove less effective against a politician whose immigrant background and religious identity create multiple attack angles that risk strengthening rather than weakening his position. This strategic complexity forces Republicans to choose between different attack vectors that may conflict with each other. The question of scalability represents perhaps the most significant challenge. Municipal socialism, regardless of local success, operates within economic and legal frameworks determined by state and federal authorities. Policies effective for New York cannot necessarily extrapolate to state or national levels without fundamental changes to American structures. This limitation creates inherent tensions between local implementation and systemic transformation objectives. This creates strategic pressures that could push Mamdani toward increasingly confrontational relationships with higher government levels. Successfully implementing socialist policies may require actively undermining state and federal authority beyond traditional intergovernmental conflict boundaries. Legal and political consequences could determine whether municipal socialism represents a pathway toward broader transformation or a political dead end absorbing activist energy without producing systemic change. Coalition politics provide insights into broader electoral potential of democratic socialist politics. Mamdani's success required building alliances among historically different communities: working-class immigrants, middle-class professionals, organized labor, and movements focused on racial justice, environmental protection, and economic inequality. Maintaining these coalitions while implementing policies, imposing costs on some members, represents ongoing challenges, testing practical viability. The international dimensions provide additional strategic advantages previous American socialist politicians lacked. Mamdani's immigrant background creates connections to diaspora communities, representing significant constituencies in major American cities. These international connections provide access to governance models, policy innovations, and political strategies developed where socialist politics maintains greater legitimacy. As we observe early months of Mamdani's administration, we witness more than new mayoral approaches. We observe the first serious test of whether explicitly socialist politics can navigate institutional and economic constraints while maintaining popular support necessary for electoral survival and policy implementation. The outcomes will reverberate far beyond New York's boundaries. Success could accelerate socialist campaigns throughout American urban areas, creating networks of municipal governments committed to redistributive policies and confrontational relationships with capital. Failure could discredit democratic socialist politics for a generation, reinforcing narratives about leftist governance and practicality. The The stakes extend beyond electoral politics to fundamental questions about American capitalism and democracy's future. If municipal socialism proves capable of improving urban living standards while maintaining popular support, it demonstrates alternatives to market-based social solutions. If it fails or provokes effective counterattack from capital and conservative forces, it may strengthen arguments for capitalist organization inevitability. What remains certain is that the midnight ceremony marked more than local political transition. It marked the beginning of a comprehensive test of whether American institutions can accommodate fundamental challenges to their organizing principles, or whether such challenges will produce conflicts transcending democratic politics boundaries. The revolution may not be televised, but it is being inaugurated. Its first battle is fought beneath America's largest city streets, in infrastructure connecting millions to daily economic and social lives. This battle's outcome will determine whether that infrastructure serves socialist transformation or capitalist preservation. But the possibility that was theoretical yesterday is institutional today. And that transformation, quiet as it was, changes everything.